Well, on this video, what I'm going to do is go over the brain, but I'm going to divide the brain into a couple parts so you can digest it little by little. And I'm not digesting. I'm not talking about Z Nation here or anything like that. I mean, so you can absorb the information better. Okay, so let's start with the cerebrum. Okay, so we'll use this functional brain right here. Here you see the cerebellum in the back, the front here. Okay, it's the frontal lobe. Okay, all right. So let's go over some parts of the cerebrum. Okay, specifically the cortex of the cerebrum. The cortex is the outer inch, which we've evolved for millions of years. If you ever remember videos of earlier man, I think we've been through like 5 different versions. The first version, we had like these large mandibles or muscles, because all we do is just eat like the sticks with sugar from the water, just chew on that. That's why we have these big muscles in our mandibles. So sugar was just not enough in our diet, and it wasn't until a couple editions later we started using little sticks, going into the trees and getting little shrubs, and it started eating that, and that was rich in fat and protein, and then that's when our cortex started developing, and we can start, being a step ahead or of the editions that were before, where we couldn't even really communicate. So let's look at the outer part first. If you notice all these undulations and elevations, okay, those will be called the gyri and the sulci. The gyri are the elevations and the sulci are the depressions. And if you were to get this brain and flatten it out, it'd be pretty big. So in order to conserve the space in our skull, the brain was kind of like squeezed in, like it's like in a sheet of paper and then you crumble it. Well, that's kind of the same idea with our brain. Okay, so as a result, that crumbling of the paper or the brain conserving space in our skull, we have these elevations and depressions, and it's a perfect physiology, because those undulations, you can have blood vessels going through them, and the skull won't squish them. Let's do the lobes, okay? Because there's different lobes for different parts. Okay, so this is the back. So this is the occipital lobe. Okay, occipital lobe is mainly for vision. We have here on the side here is the temporal lobe, mainly for hearing. Okay, here we have the parietal lobe. Okay, which is mainly sensory processing. And then here in the front we have the frontal lobe, which is going to have motor movement, which is for your muscles. And in the front here we have the prefrontal cortex, which is what gives us our intelligence. Usually the right side is more female oriented, left side is more male. Males are more logical thinking, concrete thinking. And the right side is more creative, intuitive, artistic, more on the right side. Okay, so all right, so so that's basically, I just pretty much went over the different lobes. Okay, so the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Let me see if you can, let's do this, because it's a little bit shaky there. All right, so you can see inside here, see this is the part that we evolved, the cortex, not the orange, above the orange. Okay, so that's the used to be much flatter. Our brain was really small in relation to our body. Okay, all right, so let's look at some sulci. Okay, this sulci here that goes, all right, let's put it back together again. This sulci that goes from ear to ear, okay, right here. Okay, so one ear, this sulci right here. There we go. There you go. All right, so the sulci right here going across all the way from ear to ear. That's called the central sulcus. And the central sulcus is going to separate the sensory from the motor. Okay. Back here, here on the side, okay, it's a little challenging because there's a pin missing on this, so it's kind of like shifting. But anyways, here we have this sulci that separates the parietal lobe from the temporal lobe. That's called the lateral sulcus. And then finally back here we have the Parieto-occipital sulcus, which separates the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe. Sorry, a little bit higher up here. Parietal from the occipital. Okay. Now you see here. Let's give you an example. This is the occipital association area, and this is the occipital cortex. So the association area always lends meaning to what is felt, seen, and heard. So this is the occipital association area, occipital cortex. This you see here, you interpret what you see. Same thing with temporal. Temporal area, temporal association area, and there's a darker red in here. It's the temporal cortex. So here this is what you hear, and this is what you interpret what you hear. Same thing with the sensory. Here you have the primary sensory cortex and the primary sensory association area. Okay, so here you can see all the little different things here. If you were to poke any one of these here, that you'll feel a sensation. Okay, here you can see the lips, the face, nose. Okay, so here you feel, and here you interpret what you feel. And for the motor, the same thing. It's kind of hard to hold this. It's because it's trying to shift. But anyways, here's the premotor area, primary motor area. So here you do movements, and this is the premotor area, which is which you're gonna interpret how that movement's gonna be. Okay, so interpretation area versus just the original stimuli. Okay, what else? So we did vision, hearing, sensory motor, and the front. Like I said, you can see some of the writing there. Here on the left, this is more the male side. You see the analytical, logical, rational. It's how we men are. Okay. Okay. And on the right side, you see the female. Okay. Hopefully you agree with this. You have the artistic. See, can read it. Artistic. The creativity, the intuitional. Okay, so that's more like the female right side. But of course, you know, things are starting to blur a little bit as we're evolving. So we're kind of pretty much almost balancing that out. For the most part, it's pretty much accurate. Okay, and we complement each other. Okay. All right. So that's the cortex. The cortex allowed us to interpret our feelings, our hearing, our seeing, our smelling. Here's the smelling also, the olfactory cortex, which is on the left temporal lobe, okay, and the right. Everything is pretty much paired on each side. Now, the only thing that is really on one side is just the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. Okay, so the Broca's area allows us to move our mouth as we speak, and the Wernicke's area allows us to kind of put words together. Okay, so like 3-sentence words like I ate food, you sat down. So whenever if you're drunk, you know, and a cop can tell that you're slurring your speech, and because this area has just been affected from the alcohol. Okay, so okay, so that's pretty much the cortex with so the gyri, you can call this the precentral gyrus, and it's the postcentral gyrus. Now you can think of this, the precentral gyrus, being the structure and the function is the primary motor cortex, and the postcentral gyrus being the structure and the function is the primary sensory cortex. There's one more thing people kind of point out sometimes. And here you have the insula inside here. Insula, this is called the insula, or the island of Rail. Okay. All right, so that's pretty much it. I just wanted to go over this video just specifically for the cortex. And here you can see another brain. Here's the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, occipital lobe. Okay. And out here will be the cortex and the medulla with the brainstem. Okay. Brain is a little bit more, more realistic. Okay. The other one's a little bit more instructional. It helps a little bit better. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This is the first part of the video. Just wanted to show you the cortex, talk a little bit about the steps that I'm going to do for the different videos, and a little bit of history in the brain. Okay, to help you out. And that's pretty much it. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Make sure to like and subscribe. And that's it. Until the next video, take care. Bye.